Today we have an interesting story where the government is shut down, and this is the first time that this has happened in the last 6 years. This is pretty remarkable news, and we actually don't know what's going to happen with the economy, but only historicals can tell us what can happen next. Let's go dive into what happens with the government shutdown, what's going to happen going forward, what that means for your investments, what that means for your stocks, and how the whole economy is going to be affected overall. Let's get right into it. So I have this article, and this is the first time that I'm reading it, so this is a live reaction. And it's why the US government has shut down and really what happens now. The US federal government has shut down after Republican and Democratic politicians failed to resolve a budget dispute. And this means that some, but not all, US government services are temporarily suspended. And 40% of the federal workforce, about 750,000 people, are expected to be put on unpaid leave. That is people without a job. That is people without earnings for the next couple of who knows when. Although budget confrontations are pretty common in the US politics, this spending fight is essentially tense between President Trump, who has drastically reduced the size of the national government taking office, and he has suggested that they should cut further costs, which is laying people off essentially. But the reason why the US government has shut down is because the Republicans and Democrats can't agree to pass a bill, and this is going to bleed into October and maybe even beyond. Now, on the contrary, it states that Democrats are opposing spending cuts to government health agencies. Of course, people don't like to see when government health agencies are being shut down because, one, you're getting a lack of healthcare, and you would hope that the people that you are going to for just getting health are going to be able to service you. But the question now is which government services are going to stop and which are going to carry on. Not all of them are going to stay in operation, but some are actually going to shut down. Now, the border control and law enforcement staff, immigration and customs enforcement, as well as in-hospital medical care and air traffic control workers, they're expected to operate as usual. And these are pretty essential in Trump's eyes to keep operating. Now, Social Security and Medicare checks are going to be sent out, although benefit verification and card issuance may stop. So you might actually just see a delay in your Social Security or medical attention that you need there. And government employees are deemed less essential when they are doing not as essential jobs that Trump sees valuable. So they are going to be temporarily put on unpaid leave, meaning that you're out of work and you're not going to get paid for that. Now, contractors who work in federal agencies are also not going to be getting paid as well. And we're going to miss out on those employees working there. They're going to not earn a wage for the next however who long knows. Additionally, you have services like the food assistance program that is federally funded for preschools and institutions. These are going to be reduced and closed. Now, other agencies like the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, like the CDC, are going to be expected to furlough many workers. This is just not having work for people to do. And that is going to really get rid of a lot of workers. And the last time we had a shutdown around 2018, national parks and forests remained open, but with few or no staff. Now, this is going to lead into what they say is vandalism, littering, or looting of historical sites. Of course, there needs to be somebody there to check in people to make sure they're not doing mischievous things and keep our nature whole. We could also see a delay in travel. We know that Americans and airlines, they are kind of seeing a slowdown or a reducing of efficiency. There are passport agencies that have also warned that it could take longer to actually process travel documents. Like if you are traveling out of the state or to another country, this could take a long time if you don't have the correct documents to travel. Of course, mail will be delivered and remain open because the U.S. Postal Service does not depend on the Congress for funding. But what does that mean for your schools? Most of American schools are state funded, meaning that the federal government isn't responsible for the billions of dollars of grants and student loans, meaning that this could effectively come to a halt. And what that means for your kids in school, it means that they're still going to get funding because it's mainly from the state, and you don't have to worry too much about your kids being ripped from school or an education. The teachers are still going to get paid and the kids are still going to show up to school. But what does this all really mean for your portfolio, your stocks, your investments, and going forward? What does that actually entail, a government shutdown? So let's look at the past government shutdowns in the past that have just been pretty long. We know the last one was from 2018 to 2019. This lasted almost 30-ish days, a little bit longer. And before that, there was one from 2018. Before that, 2013, going as back as 1996, 1995, and this is way older than my time. So let me know if you guys actually remember these times way back then. Anything older than 1990s? Do you guys remember the government actually being shut down, and what was the vibe like back then? Because now I feel like a lot of people are talking about it, but we've seen the stock market just rip and rip to higher highs. So this is actually very interesting to see. We've had two government shutdowns under President Trump. We've had one under Barack Obama, and we've had two under Bill Clinton, one under Bush, and quite a few under Reagan. Now, of course, this government shutdown actually started October 1st. And this was when you see everybody not going to work if you work for a government agency. Who is going to be worried about this? I would say one, government workers, or two, companies that have contracts with government and just generating a bunch of money from government. So let's say you have a company like Palantir who sources a lot of their money from government contracts. One, the government might actually pay less into this because they are not funding these programs as much. Or two, you're worried that these people might just lose their jobs. And if there's no work to be done, what is the need to have somebody who's getting paid $150,000, $200,000 just to be there? It doesn't make that much sense, right? So we could actually have a pretty big worry if you are working in anything government related, government agencies that they're going to cut funding from, anywhere where it's just non-essential to the government to operate, and anything that is related to government funding in terms of contracts from corporations. But what have stocks done in the past? Let's see the history, because we know that history can give us a pretty good idea of where we're going to trend in the future. We don't know if it's going to be bad or good. We can only look to see what it's done in the past, and usually history rhymes. So the last time that we had a shutdown was 2018. Let's go to 2018 right about here. What happened? Yeah, there was a dip in the 2017 and 2018, but after 2018, 2019 even, when we had the other government shutdown, we just ripped higher and higher. This is the S&P 500, by the way, the biggest 500 companies in the US basketed. So if you would have invested in 2019, and you would have been totally fine. But if you pulled your money out because you were scared of a government shutdown, then it would have been the wrong move to make. Now, if you were to go back in time and look at the other shutdowns, 2013, you go back to 2013, you can actually see that there was no slowdown in the stock market, in the S&P 500. The 2013 just looked like a regular year when you could have bought and made money the next year. And if you zoom out, where are you today? A lot higher than 2013. Let's go to the one before that. Now, in 1996, there was actually a time where you'd probably be very, very scared. But what happens here in 1996? The S&P 500 didn't even break a sweat. You would have been up way, way much more, going from 800 points to 1,400 points in about 3 years. That is an insane growth rate year over year. And you really didn't have to sweat it. And you didn't see a drop until like the 2000s .com bust in 2000s and 2001. Historically, it pays to be investing when things are uncertain, right? If people are worried of the US government shutting down and they're going to pull their money out, it just doesn't make sense. You want to go into a market where there is uncertainty and doubt and prices sell off. Granted, we don't have prices selling off, nor have they in the past. If we do get a government shutdown, if this does prolong a lot longer to where you could see equity values or the market just drop in whole, that would be the perfect time to get in, because we know that any news is great news when it comes to the stock market dropping as a whole. Any high quality compounders, you really want to make sure that you're doubling down when there's these uncertain times. And I'm willing to bet that if you were to invest today, given that there's a government shutdown, you probably do really well in the next couple of years. I think valuations aren't extremely stretched, and they actually kind of make sense. Like if you look at Nvidia right now, the price to earnings ratio of Nvidia is actually about 50. You look at Cisco in the 2000s .com bust, it was 150 to 200. Now, does that really make sense back then? Probably not. Would it make sense for Nvidia today to trade at that multiple? Probably not as well. When you start seeing valuations become immense like that, then that's when you start getting scared to pull out. But I don't think it makes sense to get scared over a US government shutdown, because historically, it's done nothing but give us great returns as investors. So I'm not worried about the US government shutting down in my portfolio. I'm going to continue to invest regularly, and I will continue to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching today. And if you guys made it to this point in the video, make sure that you say subscribe to the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.